When we are still trying to come to terms with some of the measures that were being put in place by the UK government to cut down net migration, some MPs are still putting forward more recommendations to further cut down net migration in the UK. In a minute, I'll be sharing with you a report that is being put up by Robert Jerrick, who is one of the top conservative and leader to further cut down net migration. This and many more I'll be sharing with you in this video. So if you care to know more about this, you need to watch to the end to get the full information. And if you've not subscribed to this channel, you can as well do that and share with all your contacts. Before going into today's video, let me share with you the sponsor of today's video, Amber Student. Amber Student is a student-friendly company that deals with student accommodation within the UK and other countries. If you're planning to come to the UK to study, Amber Student is your best shot to provide you with a well-furnished student accommodation with bills inclusive. There's a link beneath the description box of this video. You can use that link to book your Amber Student accommodation and get a huge discount. Amber Student is a student-friendly company that deals on student accommodation. Use the link on the description box to book your Amber Student accommodation and thank me later. When we are still trying to come to terms with some of the measures that have been put in place to cut down net migration, one of prominent conservative leader, Robert Jenrick, has put forward a recommendation to further reduce net migration in the UK. As usual, I'll be sharing my screen with you so we can read through some of the reports that was put forward by Robert Jenrick to further cut down net migration in the UK. Robert Jenrick heaps pressure on Sunak with 30 points plan to curb migration. The former minister co-authored a report calling for measures to be introduced before the general election, including caps on the main migrant routes. The government must undo the disastrous post-Brexit liberation that betrayed the public wish for lower immigration before the general election, Robert Jenrick has demanded. The Tory former immigration minister has put forward more than 30 recommendations to curb migration in Centre for Policy Studies report he co-authored. The proposal includes capping health and care visas at 30,000, scrapping the graduate route for international students, and indexing salary threshold for visa route in line with inflation. This is some of the recommendations that were made by Robert Jenrick to further curb net migration in the UK. One salient point most persons do not understand in all of these measures that are being put in place to cut down net migration. Net migration on its own is not just the number of persons that come into the UK, right? In finance or in accounting, if you are trying to get your net profit, you must first of all get a gross profit from which you can extract your net profit after you've less all expense and outgoings, right? The net migration they are referring to in this context is not the total number of persons that were given clearance entry into the UK, or otherwise known as visa, but the total number of people that remain back after the expiration of their initial visa that was granted to them. So in all of this, they are trying to bring the number of people that can remain back after the expiration of their initial visa that was granted to them. International students constitute a large chunk of those that remain back in the UK after the completion of their study. One way to bring down the net migration is to scrap the post-study work permit. The highlight of the report put forward by Robert Jenrick is to scrap post-study work permit. Scrapping the post-study work permit will further discourage international students from choosing the UK as their destination of study. And with that, net migration will reduce. The report put forward by Robert Jenrick clearly captured the reason why net migration in the UK still remain high. One of the ways to bring down the net migration is to ensure that every avenue that is available for those that are given visa to come to the UK, at the expiration of that visa granted, they will not have any other avenue to remain back in the UK than to return back to their country. These are some of the highlights of the recommendation that were made by Robert Jenrick. So net migration on its own is not the total number of persons that were granted visa to come into the UK, but the number of persons that remain back in the UK after the expiration of the initial visa that was granted to them to come into the UK. And one way they feel this can be achieved is to close all the available avenue, which post-study work permit is one of those avenues that is available for international students to extend their stay here in the UK after the expiration of their student visa. He and fellow MPs on the Conservative right have been urging the Prime Minister to take action since reverse official estimates published in November indicated the net migration figure, the difference between the number of people arriving and leaving Britain, reached a record 745,000 in 2022. Mr. Sunak has faced demands for a change of political course as MPs from both sides of the Tories hope to reverse his electoral fortunes in the wake of a drubbing in local and regional contests. Some of these recommendations might get an expedite action because of the recently conducted local and regional election where the Conservative lost most of their stronghold to the opposition party, which is the Labour Party in the UK. In the last general election, one of the promises they made to their constituents is to reduce net migration in the UK. But close to 4 years after that electionary campaign, net migration is still on the rise. In a bid to fulfill some of those electoral promises, these recommendations that are being made from different MPs within the Conservative will be given an expedite action. The ball is now being shifted from the number of persons that are coming into the UK or the number of visas that the UK will be giving to migrants who are coming to the UK. Some of these recommendations that were made actually touch the core of those currently living in the UK. If this recommendation goes through, most persons that are studying in the UK will not be able to get post-study work permit. The report hammer on net migration, not the number of persons that are coming to the UK, but those who are already in the UK. They are trying to discourage or close all avenues you can use to extend your stay here in the UK, such that at the expiration of the initial visa that was given to you to come into the UK, either to study or for whatever reason, you will not have any other avenue to extend your stay here in the UK. This is really a dicey time for international students, most especially. Mr. Jenrick and his co-authors, Tory former Minister Neil Brain and CPS Research Director Carl Williams, argue that large-scale migration has failed to deliver significant fiscal benefits while putting pressure on housing, public service, and infrastructure. Mr. Jenrick said it would be unforgivable if the government did not use the time before the general election to undo the disastrous post-Brexit liberations that betrayed the express wishes of the British public for lower immigration. The changes we propose today would finally return numbers to the historical norm and deliver the highly selective, highly skilled immigration system voters were promised. These policies could be implemented immediately and would consign low-skilled mass migration to the past. Outcome of the last local and regional election actually prompted some of these drastic measures that have been put in place by some of the top Conservative leaders. The Conservative Party lost most of their stronghold to Labour Party. Their inability to implement their campaign promises, which is to cut down net migration. So from this report put forward by Robert Jenrick and his co-author, drastic action needs to be taken before the next general election, which will be coming up later this year. So guys, this will be a tough time for international students and those planning to come into the UK. So guys, we've come to the end of today's video. If you gain value for this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to join the amazing ever-growing family. And you can as well leave a thumb up so YouTube can recommend this content to a wider audience. See you in my next video.